Okay, welcome back, folks. It's time for our next 308 video. Now, hopefully you saw the last video where I talked about some of the various problems I've been having here, but our 308 upper for our AR-10 has now got the new JP barrel that we bought. It's a 20-inch JP SuperMatch barrel with a 1 in 10 twist. And we also got the JP high pressure bolt. Now, back to those problems I was having. I did film a break-in video for this and put about 50 rounds through it, but I had some technical difficulties and lost all of the footage. If you want more detail, you can see the last video where I whined and complained about it for like 20 minutes. But where we sit today, I consider the barrel to be broken in. JP's barrel break-in procedure calls for a 60 round break-in with 3 cleanings. I didn't quite shoot that many, but we got to 45. So it's got 45 rounds through it. I consider it broken in. Now we're ready to move on today and see if we can find some accuracy with this guy. So I went fishing yesterday and that put me in a part of the world near some gun stores. So I picked up another pound of Alliant Power Pro 2000 MR. Mainly for 224 Valkyrie, but this is also a good 308 powder. But the main thing is, while I was in the shop picking up this pound of powder, I did have a look and see what they offered for some factory ammo in 308. Had a bunch of people in the comments section of the 308 videos with our previous barrel who wished I had some factory ammo to put through it. They don't trust my reloads, I guess. Well, that's what we've got today. Because when I went over and looked, they had the Federal Gold Medal Match, the 175 grain stuff. And look at that price, $21.95. That's like internet price, man. A second shop I stopped in, this stuff was almost 30 bucks. So I felt like that was a good deal. I went ahead and picked some up. So I think this gives us a good starting point because we have a ton of these bullets. The 175 grain Sierra Match King, I've got a big box of 500 that I haven't shot that many of. So we've got at least, I don't know, 400 or so sitting here ready to go. So I think that's what we'll do. We'll shoot a little bit of this stuff and we'll see if we can duplicate its performance with some hand loads here. So when I got home and started looking up, exactly what I had bought here, this is the GM 308 M2 is the part number of this stuff. This uses standard commercial federal brass. 308 stamped brass. Now apparently there is also a GM 762 M2 model number that's pretty much the same stuff, but it uses military marked 762 federal brass. Now if you follow my 223 stuff, I've got a series where we attempt to clone the Mark 262 military round. This stuff right here, some Black Hills 5.56 ammo. And over in those videos, I've had a lot of people request that I do a similar sort of exploration in 30 caliber with the M118 LR ammo. I'm coming to a point here in a minute. Okay, so as I mentioned, there's this standard gold medal match. There's the GM 762 M2 version, which is in military brass, and apparently is called Mark 316 Mod 0 or Mark 316 Mod 0. I don't know what the hell they call it, which is apparently very similar to the M118 LR, which apparently is in Lake City brass. All of these use the same bullet. Now, what I don't know at this point is what the actual performance difference is between this commercial gold medal, the 762 gold medal, and the M118 LR that's in Lake City brass. I think the specs are pretty close between all three. Those of you that are up to speed on these things, if I've said anything stupid or if I'm not understanding the different rounds that are available and their names, please let me know. Let us all know down in the comments section. But at least here for the first video in this journey, if it does end up becoming a journey, this is going to be a pretty good baseline. Now, when you go out searching for load data or people talking about duplicating these loads, you immediately see people talking about IMR 4064. You see a ton of people saying that 42 grains, right around 42 grains of 4064 is not only a duplication load, but it's actually what Federal uses. That's what people are claiming. Now the M118 LR round is supposedly loaded with reloader 15 to similar, velocity specifications. Now another thing I saw a lot of people speculating on was that since Federal is in that same, conglomerate or whatever with Alliant, I saw speculation that maybe they had switched to reloader 15. And other people even wondering if they might have switched to Power Pro 2000 MR. So what I've done is I did pull apart one of the rounds. I pulled the bullet and had a look at the powder. So what you're looking at here, the powder from the factory round is in the center. Reloader 15 is on the left, and IMR 4064 is on the right. Here's another picture. This is the best I can do at a close-up. So this stuff really does look a lot like IMR 4064. And Reloader 15 is a little bit different. I think those granules are a bit smaller, and it looks a little bit shinier. And that's another discussion you run into a lot, is apparently this has changed a lot over the years. And that's part of what's been difficult, is trying to wade through what information is old and what information is up to date. Because I saw speculation that it used to be Reloader 15 and they switched to IMR 4064 for temperature stability. You got a double base powder and a single base powder. So I saw a lot of people saying that's why it's 4064 is for temperature stability. Now the charge weight range for these two powders is almost the same. And the powder I pulled out of the case, it ended up being 42.4 grains. And that does, you know, looking at the load data that's available out there, that does fall in line with a reasonable charge weight for IMR 4064. So that's going to be the plan for today, IMR 4064. Now here's the problem with our upper, with our new upper. The tests I did during the break-in didn't really give me a good feel for how this setup is going to be affected by putting my suppressor on here. I like to shoot suppressed a lot, but before we start taking that route, what I want to do today is really look closely at how the suppressor affects the gun. So I want to keep it narrowed down to just one powder, just IMR 4064. Here are the charge weights we're going to shoot. I want to go ahead and try and shoot up to 42.0 grains. Now, if we look at Sierra's load data, they show a max charge of 42.8 grains. Over at Hodgdon, they go a little bit crazy. Their max charge, they show 45.6 grains. The only place I could find IMR 4064 data where 42.0 grains was maybe over max was with the Hornady manual. And it's load data for their 178 and 180 grain bullets. They don't really have a 175 grain bullet. So for their heavier class of bullets, they show a max charge of 39, which is a little bit lower than I would have expected. But from everybody else, Hodgdon, Nosler, Berger, Lyman, the Sierra book, they all show 42 as being a safe charge. So let's just go with that. Just to try and cover as much ground as possible here in the first video with this combo, I want to shoot 4/10 of a grain increments. So that puts us starting down at 40.4 grains. So I think we're covering a lot of ground here. Our max charge is reasonable. So let's just load them up and see how it compares to the box of factory ammo. Now on the primer side of things, my collection of large rifle primers is pretty lame. All I've got available are some Winchesters and some CCIs. I think we'll just go with CCI. The CCI number 200 standard large rifle primer is what we'll use. So the last thing to talk about is brass. First of all, I want to show you guys, look at this loading tray, if I can get it to focus. This is one of the Lyman aluminum loading blocks. This was sent to me by a viewer. He was watching the 6.5 Creedmoor and 308 videos where I was using a universal loading block and decided I needed something a little bit nicer. So thank you very much to him. This thing is a tank. Like, you wouldn't want to drop that on your foot. Should be nice to prevent spillage. And of course the brass fits in there really nice. If anything, it puts the rounds just a little bit too close to one another. But then again, that makes for a pretty nice little compact setup here. I've mainly been using these guys recently, the Frankfurt Arsenal Perfect Fit reloading trays. These are like $4 or $5. They fit really nice. They've got all the different sizes you might need for your different size brass. So this is kind of what I've been sticking with. They're cheap and they work nice. This guy's a different story. I think it's 25 or 30 bucks. So this guy's going to really need to impress me to make it worth my while here, because it's hard to pass up the $5 option. But it is nice, man. It is really nice. All right, so the brass that's in it. We're going to shoot Lapua today. If we go back to the batch that we've been using, the Starline brass, that was one thing that was a little bit confusing in my last video where I just complained about everything that was going wrong. And I was talking about 224 Valkyrie Starline brass and 308 Starline brass at the same time, and it got a little bit confusing. This batch of Starline 308 brass has been fired quite a few times. Like, we've been using it for a long time. So it was ready to go. And that's one of the main reasons why I was using this specific set, was so that if, you know, tuning the gas block and learning the basics of the setup, we're probably going to tear up some brass. So that's why I was using this older batch. Still good brass, but I knew it didn't have long to go. Last loading, the primer pockets were just too darn loose, and this batch is getting retired. However, I have nothing bad to say about Starline brass, really. This has been a good set of brass. It's thick like military brass, so case capacity is going to be less than most of your other commercial brass, but for most of us, that doesn't matter. But I would absolutely buy Starline brass again, no doubt. Now, I've had a batch of 100 pieces of Lapua brass that we've been shooting on this channel since the beginning. These are for my Tika. This is the other 50 pieces. And these guys have at least 10 firings. But these have almost exclusively been neck sized. Like I think I've full length sized these 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 times at most. So the brass is still in really good shape, but it's not all that far from retirement either. So I don't mind maybe banging this stuff up a little bit here in today's video. Now, the odds are pretty good that this is the only video where we'll use this Lapua brass, because another viewer got in touch with me and said he had bought a huge pack of IMI match brass from Widener's. Now, IMI is the Israeli military stuff, and everything I can read and find about this stuff, it's awesome. It's good stuff. It's good brass. It compares very well to Lake City brass. So I've got a viewer. Thank you, sir. Did I say thank you? Did I ever complete the point and actually say thank you to the gentleman who sent me the loading block? Thank you to him. And also thank you to this other gentleman who's going to send me some of this IMI 308 brass to try out. So once I've got that in hand, we'll probably switch over to that. Now, that's a huge deal. The case capacity difference between Lake City or IMI or even Starline brass and something like this Lapua brass is pretty big. The Lapua is lighter, it's thinner, and it has more case capacity. That's why you can get in a lot of trouble switching brass or trying to shoot mixed brass in 308. You've got some wildly varying case capacities out there. And actually, I've got a video. It was back whenever I had first bought that batch of Starline brass. I took a bunch of case capacity measurements with different types of brass. So if you're interested in a better explanation of what I'm talking about, that might be the video to go back to. So the information from today's video may not help us all that much once we switch brass that's got wildly different capacity. We're basically going to be starting over. But that doesn't mean today's video doesn't have worth. Because like I mentioned, so we've got our 5 loads of IMR 4064. I'm going to load up 10 rounds of each. I'm going to shoot 5 rounds with the suppressor, and I'm going to shoot 5 rounds without the suppressor. We're going to do the same thing with the factory ammo that we've got. Now, in the video that never was, where I lost all of the footage, and I talked about it in the last video a little bit, my initial test with this upper, when I put the suppressor on and the gun got a good bit overgassed, there was a big difference in brass damage that we saw. So for each scenario, so for our unsuppressed loads, I want to have my gas block set just right for unsuppressed, and then same thing for the suppressed tests. So definitely going to be a lot of screwing around with gas blocks and suppressors today, but hopefully we'll learn something. This brass has already been sized. I cleaned the primer pockets a little bit with a scraper, deburred and chamfered the case mouth. These guys are ready for primers. So I think that's pretty much it. One other thing we didn't talk about was overall length. I did pull out 10 pieces of the factory ammo just to get an idea, and most of it is just under 2.8 inches, like 2.798 inches, although there was one piece that was a little bit long at 2.806. So basically 2.8 inches. Now, my tests with this bullet in this barrel show that the bullet hits the lands of the rifling at about 2.860. So that's right at 60 thousandths of jump. So that's what we'll stick with today. So let's get to priming. Tell you what, even after all the firings on this brass, the primer pockets feel fantastic. Tell you what, even if you're a bit of a cheapskate like myself, everybody should treat themselves to some Lapua brass at one point in their life, just to feel those sexy primer pockets. Crazy Finnish bastards. They sure know how to make some brass. All right, so I've got our powder all weighed out, and I'm ready to start seating bullets. Now, luckily in this case, we've got some factory ammo. Yeah, this guy that we're trying to duplicate, so let's just put this guy up into the die. And then we'll just screw down the adjustment until we feel it touch, and that should get us pretty close. There it is. It'll be a little bit long, but that's a good thing. Okay, so the first 3 rounds here, I've got numbers all the way from 2.808, 2.800, and 2.810. Now that variation is coming from the me-plat of the bullet being a little bit wonky. This is that one that read long, and you can see it kind of has a little bit of a janky tip there. So we're at least in the ballpark. Now let's switch over to the Hornady bullet comparator. Let's see if there's a number we can use that we're close to. Now I expect these to all read within 1/1000th of an inch or so with the bullet comparator. 2.236, 2.235, and 2.235. So we're still a little bit long, so I'll tell you what, let's dial it down until we read 2.230. Okay, that's 5/1000ths. Go through and seat them again. All right, let's see what we got now. 2.231, 2.230, 2.231, 2.230, and 2.231. Good. Let me see what our normal overall length range is here. All right, so our longest is 2.806 inches, and the shortest is 2.796 or 2.795. So it's pretty much exactly what we saw from the factory ammo. Now this first load here, 40.4 grains, still a little bit of powder moving in there. So let's jump all the way to our max charge of 42.0, see if it is compressed, and if it is, we'll see if it's stretching out our overall length at all. I didn't hear any crunching at all. Yep, and I think I can still feel just the slightest little bit of powder movement. Now that'll probably change whenever we go to IMI brass and have less capacity than the Lapua here. These first two, 2.805 and 2.802. And with the bullet comparator, 2.231 and 2.231. Fantastic. Our length is just perfect. So I just got to go through and seat the rest of these guys, and we're ready to hit the range. All right, folks, it's time to get started. Our gun is an Aero Precision M5E1 setup. I've got a Magpul PRS stock on it. It's got a CMC 2-pound, 4-pound, 2-stage trigger, and the barrel is a JP SuperMatch 20-inch 1 in 10 twist. This is a heavy profile barrel and has a 936 gas block. So what I went with is the standard JP adjustable gas block. So I'm going to be cranking on that guy quite a bit today. I decided to move my 24 power scope over to this gun. In the previous testing, I've been using one of my 16 power Vortexes, but I decided to swap over to the 24 power. It's in an odd mount base, and that's pretty much it. Magpul 10 round PMags, and I think that pretty much covers it. We're going to start out unsuppressed, no suppressor. Suppressor's over here. And that's how we'll leave it for the whole first part of the test. Then later we'll put the suppressor on, we'll get the gas tuned just right for the suppressor, and then we'll repeat the whole same test over again with the suppressor. Now this is the first time I've had this scope and mount on the AR-10, so we got to get this guy zeroed. I have no idea how far off it's going to be, so I've got a target at 50 yards. Hopefully we'll be able to get on paper. So let's get started. I've got the gas shut completely off, so I'm going to be loading rounds one at a time, and each shot we're going to come out on the gas block adjustment by one full turn. We'll do that until we get bolt hole open, and then we'll fine tune from there, whatever. We'll just see how it goes. All right, first shot. This is the factory ammo. Target at 50 yards. I'm just going to aim for the middle of the paper. All right, I want to come left 1 minute and up 8 minutes. We didn't eject the case that time, no surprise. And the piece of brass looks great. So I'm going to come out one turn on the gas block. So I just loosen the set screw in the front, then the adjustment screw is back here. Okay, out one turn and tighten the set screw. Sweet. All right, let's shoot one more at 50 yards, and I'll aim at the dot by where my last shot hit. See if we're close. All right, we're really close now. So I'm going to move the target to 100 yards. I'm going to come out another turn on our gas block, and we'll finish getting this guy zeroed. Okay, so the target is now at 100 yards, which means I now have my Caldwell Ballistic Precision chronograph out there. We can start collecting velocity data. So let's continue to hone our zero and tweak on our gas block a little bit here. right, that's a little over 2 minutes high and 2 minutes to the right. Yes, we'll go 2.5 down, and I want to go 2 to the left. All right, I felt the bolt move a little bit that time, which is a good sign. We're almost getting there, but still didn't eject the round. Brass still looks the same, so I'm going to come out one more revolution on the gas block. The velocity was 25.78 on that shot, by the way. Okay, one more. Okay, still no ejection, no bolt hold open. Okay, one more turn on the gas block. Velocity on the last guy was 25.85. Okay, still not enough gas. So we've got 5 rounds left that I want to shoot here unsuppressed, and I was hoping to have the gas figured out by this point and be able to shoot a nice slow 5-shot group without worrying about the gas block, but that's not the situation we're in. That sucks. So I'm going to go to a fresh dot and start shooting a 5-shot group, but I guess at least hopefully we'll be able to get the gas figured out before we start shooting our reloads. So, all right, velocity on that last guy was 26.31. So we've got 25.78 minimum and 26.31 maximum so far. The box, I didn't bring it out here with me. I think it says 2600. So our 20-inch barrel is getting us pretty much right where we need to be. All right, one turn on the gas block. All right, so that time we actually ejected our case and locked the bolt back. That's very good news. That was 5 turns out on the gas block. So what I've done is I've gone back in a half turn to 4.5, just to just to see what happens here. Okay, that time we ejected it, but didn't lock the bolt back. Good. So I put the gas block back to 5 turns out where we were on the last shot. So the last 3 rounds here, let's see if the gun will run them properly and see if we can keep this group going. Well, dang it. Those last 2 shots really opened things up. Now, what I find interesting is these last 3 shots where the group opened up were the only ones I shot in succession, like pretty close to one another. Like there was 60 seconds, maybe 90 seconds of pause between those last 3 shots. I don't know. All right, let me gather up the brass. I need to go hang a new target to test our hand loads. Our final velocity with the factory ammo, the average was 25.87 with a 19.1 feet per second standard deviation. So that's pretty close to the box. All right, let me get reconfigured. We'll move on. Tell you another thing that dawned on me is those last 2 shots that opened up that last group were the first ones we fed out of a magazine. So as we move along here, if we're having disappointing accuracy, maybe I'll try single feeding. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. All right, so we're moving on to our hand loads. This is 4064 and this is 40.4 grains first. Now we've got the gas block set for that 2600 feet per second factory load. So I won't be surprised if we maybe have a function issue or 2 here with this lighter charge. I don't know. All right, let's get started. All right, sweet. It did run. It locked the bolt back. Felt good. Like recoil doesn't feel bad. I can tell that the buffer and spring and everything seems to be working just about right here on the gas side of things, which is good news. Okay, brass looks good. Moving on to 40.8 grains. All right, pretty decent group. So good group, standard deviation of 6.4, extreme spread of 15. I like that last one. The brass looked fine. We're moving on to 41.2. So I wouldn't say I'm seeing pressure signs on the brass, but let's just say you can definitely tell where the ejector was. So we're moving on. Next up is 41.6 grains. It's amazing how that standard deviation went to crap on that last group. All right, everything's still looking good. This is our last group unsuppressed. This is 42.0 grains. We really need it all to come together here. So here we go, one whole group. All right, folks, that's a pretty decent finish. What was our velocity? 25.46. That's just about perfect. All right, I need to swap targets. I need to put on the suppressor. I need to reset the gas block adjustments. So let me go do that. But man, here so far, I'm pretty happy with the way the naked barrel shot. All right, folks, I've taken a nice little break. Make sure the gun had plenty of time to cool down. I've screwed on our suppressor now. This is a Silencer Co. Omega. And our good gas block number without the suppressor was 5 turns out from bottomed out. So we're gonna have a whole lot more gas now. I've turned it down to 2 turns. So we're 2 turns from bottomed out. I think we'll be low on gas. I don't know, we'll see. So just like before, I'm gonna load them one at a time in the magazine and we'll tune it until it locks the bolt back. Okay, we didn't lock the bolt back. Now as far as zero goes, doesn't look like we had any shift in zero. Actually, I backed it out 1.5 turns. So we are 3.5 turns from bottomed out. Let's see what this does. Nope, that's still not enough to eject it. All right, so this is a little bit over 4 turns out. So we're almost into the range of where we were unsuppressed. See if this does it. Okay, so it locked back that time. So I turned it back down about 1/4 of a turn. All right, I think I've almost got the gas dialed in. Looks like just a little bit less than 4 turns for suppressed. So like 3.8 turns from bottomed out, unless I counted wrong, I don't know. All right, so our first four shots, pretty good group going on. We've got 5 rounds of the factory ammo left. Let's see if it'll feed them from the magazine. Let's go ahead and shoot at a fresh dot. See what happens. Nope, I must have miscounted. That guy didn't even eject. All right, hopefully I was a half turn off on my count. So now we're a little under 4.5 turns. All right, I like that one. The velocity is unchanged when we add the suppressor. So before we were 25.87, now we're 25.88, so that's unchanged. All right, I need to go switch targets one last time and we'll see how the handloads shoot. All right, so the gas tweaks have got to continue here because those last 3 shots of factory ammo that I fired, the brass had a burr raised up at the ejector mark. So I've turned the gas back down about 1/4 of a turn. All right, first up, 40.4 grains. So the brass on this first shot looks fine. So I think we're good. All right, the gun didn't go off. I'm assuming we probably have an empty chamber. Yep, we do. So let me turn the gas back up a little. Okay, 40.8. So I'm still chasing the gas just a little bit. We're getting more pressure signs than we were without the suppressor, so I turned it down just a little bit more. Next up, 41.2. All right, I don't think, yeah, that's not good. Failure to feed, or actually failure to eject. So it looks like when we were shooting without the suppressor, we kind of got lucky on the gas, because here's suppressed. It's being a pain in the butt. Like every little 1/8 or 16th of a turn is making a difference. All right, let's try that. Dang it. Yeah, this guy got a pretty nice little shoulder dent. I don't know, we'll see if it'll fire out. Yeah, it looks like the adjustments with this gas block are going to be razor thin, because I went from a failure to feed, bumped it up about 1/8 of a turn, and I'm getting ejector marks that are a good bit worse than we saw shooting without the suppressor. So I'm making smaller and smaller tweaks to the gas block, hoping to see the same brass signs we saw without the suppressor. All right, next up, 41.6 grains. Okay, last up, 42.0 grains. All right, folks, we have got a whole lot to digest and think about. So let's get back to the bench. All right, let's have a quick look at some brass. This is the factory ammo we shot without the suppressor. I didn't get any ejector marks or brass damage that I could see on any of these. So it really ran smooth. The primers on these guys are a little bit flattened. I mean, these are Federal primers, not exactly known as being a hard cut primer in the first place. So yeah, they're a little bit flattened out. Now the same ammo, when we put the suppressor on and started screwing around with the gas a little bit, got into a couple spots where had some nasty ejector marks with some burrs on it. But all along, trying to tune the gas with the suppressor on was a challenge, and this was the result. Now that's 3 of the 10. There are quite a few others that didn't really get any damage at all. So we were close to having the gas about right, but things were definitely better without the suppressor. Now the groups we shot without the suppressor, this was the worst piece of brass I had. Just the tiniest little bit of a smear. And I do mean a tiny little bit. But otherwise, without the suppressor, no other problems. And by the time we started shooting groups, we had the gas just about where we wanted, and I didn't touch the gas block at all through these 25 shots, and the brass came out looking great. Now onto the groups we shot with the suppressor, it was almost the opposite. I was chasing the gas setting the whole way, never really getting it exactly where I wanted it. That guy's got a little bit of a mark. This was our starting charge. This piece is from the second charge. That guy actually got a little bit of a burr. And yeah, that continued throughout. Here's our max charge. Yeah, this guy on the right had an especially bad day. But in the primer roundness department, these CCI 200 primers definitely stood up a little bit better than the factory ammo. Now, we weren't quite up to the same velocity as the factory ammo, but we were pretty close. Not too far off. So that's about it for brass. I think we've got our hands full trying to get everything adjusted properly for suppressed use. Now, looky here, what showed up in the mail today. This is our IMI brass. See, if you take long enough to make a video, the stuff you talk about in the beginning shows up for a cameo at the end. So this stuff's pretty sweet looking. There's the head stamp, IMI 7.62 millimeter match. It's nice looking stuff. It wasn't polished after annealing like most military brass. So yeah, you can see the anneal on it. It's good looking stuff. So can't wait to try this stuff out. And thank you again to the fine gentleman that sent these to me. All right, so let's have a look at some groups, and we'll go in the order that we shot them. First up here is the factory ammo with no suppressor. If you remember, this is the one where the first 3 shots were the ones together, and then those last 2 kind of strung it out and screwed up the group a little bit. It ended up being a 1.243 inch group at 2,587 feet per second. So later when we get to suppressed, it's 2,588, I believe, whatever. We'll just call it 2,590 maybe as a target. So I was surprised to see us this close to the box velocity, like, you know, on the back of the ammo box, it's labeled 2,600 feet per second. I figured those were 24-inch barrel numbers. So I'm thrilled to be at 2,590. So let's move on to our hand loads. Our factory ammo shot right about 1.25 inches. In this one, we had 2 of them that were a little bit bigger than that, and then 3 that were a little bit smaller than that. And the last group was our best at a 0.912 inch group. So I wouldn't exactly call this awesome. Like, it's not embarrassing, but it's not awesome. It's kind of eh. But what gives me hope is that our tightest group was our highest charge weight. Our velocity was 2,546 feet per second. So we need another, 45 feet per second to match the factory ammo. Maybe this last group was a sign that maybe we'll see better accuracy on the top end, right? We didn't really see any major problems. I think were pressure related, so I think we can push it farther. I think that's probably the next step we need to take, is just go ahead and push this a little bit harder, match the velocity of our factory ammo, and hopefully the trend of tightening groups will maybe continue. So then we put on the suppressor, and our gun was already zeroed, so we were actually able to shoot 2 5-shot groups here with the factory ammo, and they were both looking pretty good. A .930 inch group and a .611 inch group. Really outstanding stuff, and that .611 inch group is our best group of the day. Velocity, like we mentioned earlier, almost exactly the same as it was without the suppressor, and similar standard deviation and extreme spread numbers as well. So it doesn't seem like the suppressor had much effect on velocity, and it looks like it might have actually tightened up our groups just a touch. So if we move on to our hand loads, it looks like we kind of just got a whole bunch more mediocre groups. I had really high hopes for this target. After we shot those 2 really nice groups with the factory ammo, I thought these hand loads were going to kick some butt, but they really didn't. But our highest charge weight, 42 grains, was our best group at a 1.055 inch group. So that's a good sign, right? Our top charge was the best group with and without the suppressor. That's excellent. And the velocities were pretty much the same with the hand loads as well. Most of the averages were within 3 or 4 feet per second, and I think the worst was like 10 feet per second. So not much velocity change. So let's step back and look at all 10 groups that we shot with the hand loads. I think we'd have to say that the top row, which was the unsuppressed row, showed a little bit better accuracy, but it's not much. They both kind of just look similarly mediocre. Now, point of impact shift with the suppressor, this is nice to see. It does seem to shoot just a little bit higher with the suppressor, but it's like maybe a minute, more like probably 3/4 of a minute, maybe something like that. So that's manageable, and it's going to make it easy going forward to be able to, you know, add and remove the suppressor whenever we want and not worry about cranking on the scope to change zero. Very similar point of impact shift as charge weights increased. So another thing I'm maybe hoping for as we explore above 42, hopefully that point of impact shift will kind of settle out a little bit, and we'll be able to find a range of a couple tenths of a grain that has a stable point of impact. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. So since we only made it up to 2,545 feet per second with our hand loads, we got to wonder how much more powder it's going to take to meet that factory ammo velocity. So I made a little chart here. These are the average velocities from our unsuppressed rounds. You can see velocity increased at a pretty linear sort of rate here. Okay, so we said our target velocity was 2,590 feet per second. So that's just one line down from the very top, and that looks like it would be 42.5 grains will get us where we need to be. Now that is extremely close to the 42.4 grains we measured out of the one piece of the factory ammo that I tore apart and measured the powder. But so far, looking at charge weights, looking at velocities, if the powder in this factory ammo is not IMR 4064, it's so close that it doesn't matter, right? I mean, it's same charge weights, same velocities. The only thing I can't say at this point, which is a little bit embarrassing, is that the hand loads don't have the accuracy that the factory ammo has, at least those suppressed groups. So as I read up about this ammo, I read a lot of pretty crazy claims about its performance, and now I can see why. It definitely gets the job done. No doubt about that. All right, time to wrap it up. This stupid video is going to be 45 minutes long. I want to stick with this. I want to continue to try and fine tune this load. We don't do that nearly enough here on my channel. We try a couple charge weights like we did today in this video, and then we move on to something else instead of continuing to fine tune this load. I think here it's worth our time to go ahead and fine tune the best load we possibly can with IMR 4064 in my gun. So I've got two ways I could go here, and I'm going to let you guys decide in a poll. We've made progress here today on a load with the Lapua brass. Should I continue to use Lapua brass for one more video? We shoot some higher charge weights, like maybe we start off with where we ended today, 42.0 grains. We'll probably shoot like 0.2 of a grain increments. So maybe we could shoot like 42 up to 42.8. The other option would be to go ahead and switch brass to our new IMI match brass. If we do that, then we're kind of starting over. In the next video, I'll look at the case capacity in this stuff and we'll compare it to what's in the Lapua, but I'm expecting less case capacity, which means we really need to start over and basically duplicate today's video with the other brass. And then we just, continue to work towards our final load with the IMI brass. So that'll be the poll. Stick with Lapua or switch to IMI for the next video. I'm also thinking about continuing with the format that we shot today where we duplicate the test both suppressed and unsuppressed. We shot a tiny little bit better today without the suppressor, except for those two groups with the factory ammo. So suppressor shot better with factory ammo, no suppressor shot better with the hand loads. So I think continuing with this format of testing both will help us to further, define any differences if they exist. And also gives us an opportunity to play around with the gas a little bit more. Because where I ended up, I was 5 turns out whenever we were shooting unsuppressed, and I ended up being 4.5 turns out with the suppressor on there. I need to turn that down just a touch. But it looks like that between 4 and 5 turns from bottomed out with the gas block was my working range today, and we'll continue to tweak that as necessary. Now, if you've been following along with this AR-10 project, back to the videos where we shot the last barrel, the Ballistic Advantage barrel, one of the loads we shot was an IMR 4064 load with a heavy bullet, and it was much less gassy than some of the other powders we were shooting. So whatever we learn here in this video and the next couple videos about the gas characteristics of 4064, whenever we move on to the next powder, we might be back to square one. But that's part of the fun here with the AR-10. If it's going to be choosy about powders and we're going to have to figure out ones that don't tear up our brass or run smoothly or whatever, that'll be interesting to track over time. All right, does that cover it? I think that covers it, folks. I'm glad you've joined me for this video. I can't wait until the next one, and I'll see you guys then.